Given the rising unemployment rates and a global inflation, many people find themselves in a dire strait, experiencing the feelings of self-loathing and self-pity. In such circumstances, it's not uncommon for individuals to contemplate the idea of resetting their lives, longing for a chance to go back in time while retaining their current consciousness, and imagining how much solace and hope such an opportunity could bring. I have experienced this time reversal. I'm sharing my story in the hope that it may help others. From my experience, it is indeed possible to go back in time and start anew. However, I must emphasize that when I say time leap, I'm referring to a precise movement to a parallel world similar to the past. While it is possible to go back, I can't guarantee that everyone will be able to do it. Some may succeed, while others may not. In my case, I have successfully made this leap to a parallel world similar to my path 3 times. Each time I returned with a range of my existing memories. For those with advanced abilities, it is said that they can time leap while still in infancy, retaining their current consciousness from a time when their sense of self was just budding. The first time I time leaped was when I was 21 years old. At the time, I was a recluse at home without a job. After graduating high school, I faced failures in finding employment, and ever since I had been confined to my home. I lost my friends, and my diary thoughts were consumed by regrets, constantly harboring self-pity in my heart. Occasionally, when I reminisce about my school days, I would indulge in regrets about that time, thinking how things would have been better if I had tried harder back then. Back then, every night before going to sleep, I will always reminisce about my student days, yearning to go back, wishing and hoping. Through this repeated ritual, I occasionally reached a point where the dream was so vivid that I began to wonder if it was actually reality. I still don't fully understand how it got to that point. The first dream I had when I initially time leaped was about my middle school days. In that dream, I was playing soccer with friends I used to be close with in middle school. We were on the vast field, not on the school grounds. Yet my classmates were all wearing their uniforms. Even the teacher who was our homeroom teacher at that time was there. Of course, based on my lived memories, there was no such grassy fields, and I had no recollection of playing soccer with the teacher. At first, I didn't realize it was a dream. Initially, while in the midst of the dream, I would become aware that I was in it, and often wake up prematurely. For a few months, I had the same dream, but I would become conscious of being in the dream, and wake up before I could progress. Around that time, I had an intuition that if I could immerse myself deeper into that dream world, I might be able to go back in time. Several months later, one day after my usual routine of reflecting on the past before going to bed, I had a dream where I was playing soccer with my friend just like before. This time I decided to focus on my actions within the dream to ensure I wouldn't wake up prematurely from realizing I was dreaming. Fortunately, it was very easy for me to concentrate on playing soccer with my friends in the dream. As I concentrated on my actions in the dream, my perception or sensation of being in the dream changed. Initially, it felt like I was vaguely observing myself in the dream, but gradually, I started to feel like my consciousness was entering the version of myself in the dream. This continued, and my awareness became even clearer. I could feel the sensation of the ball hitting my legs, and the movements of my body as if they were real. I started to get a sense of confusion, not knowing if it was dream or still a dream. At this point, it felt like the world was about to shift. When this sensation started to follow through my body, I focused even harder on my actions within the dream. Of course, I was desperate to concentrate, but I wasn't thinking about going back in time at that moment. Thinking about it would break the dream. If I truly wanted to go back in time at that moment, I knew I should naturally be able to focus on what was happening. As I continued to focus, the surroundings gradually became clearer. Familiar scenes, places near my house, and the town I lived in were gradually being reconstructed. However, I didn't become exactly the same as my past world. Fuzzy parts of my memory were naturally supplemented in the dream world, And buildings, friends, and even station names that I had no recollection of were constructed in the dream world. Afterward, things I was familiar with started to materialize. First, the grassy field where I played soccer transformed into my junior high school. Gradually, people around me started to appear. Strangely, even though I was supposed to be standing in the field, I became entrapped in a sensation where people, buildings, and scenery that were materialized later seemed to have existed from the beginning. Then I started to feel a strange sensation. Thoughts like, what on earth am I doing here, rushed through me. I looked around and unlike the vague dream world from the beginning, there was now a world where I could clearly see and feel reality. At this point, it's not so much a dream as if my consciousness has entered the parallel world, and I recognize that this is reality while the world I was in before going to sleep feels like a dream. Once I have this sensation, there's no going back to the previous world. This time leap is a one-way journey, and there's no way to return to the original world. The places where memories are clear are well defined, so I know the way back home, and my home is exactly where it should be. All that's left is to return there, go to sleep, and when I wake up it's over. From the next day onwards, I have no choice but to live in that world. I leaped back to my path 3 times, first from 21 to 13, then from 15 to 11, and finally from 24 to 19. The first leap was accidental, but the second and third times I aimed for a specific time frame. In the new world, my vague memories are reflected, so each world is subtly different. It's like parallel universes, classmates, and the townscape are different. And there are moments when someone I don't know suddenly approaches me, which can be quite startling. It often feels like I've experienced memory loss. One piece of advice I'll give is that the longer you go back, the more vague your memories of the past become, leading to greater discrepancies in the similarity of the destination world. This can result in unexpectedly landing in a completely different world. For instance, in the 3 leaps I've made, the first parallel world I entered had a different geographical layout on the world map. Alaska in the United States was connected to Chukotka in Russia. Additionally, Kyushu in Japan was connected to Korea. When I realized this, I thought I had ended up in an unbelievable place. If you prepare to enter a parallel world that is subtly different but similar to your current one, choosing to go back to the past and start over in life might be an option. This is a technique in the realm of the mind and spirit. It's an extremely faith-based field with a little scientific basis. Whether you believe it or not, factors like belief, determination, and desire greatly influence the outcome. Using these factors as the driving force for action, training yourself to vividly dream about your past every night becomes a crucial key to time leaping. This is because you intensely focus your mind on your actions in the dream and move through the world. The most important thing when returning to the past world is to cut off attachment to this world and strongly attach yourself to the past. You must convince your subconscious that the past world is your place of residence. In other words, if you can cut off attachments and live your life in solitude, looking backwards, the chances of success will increase. Conversely, if you have any hope in this world, or are determined to move forward possibly, your chances of success will be low. Since there is no risk of dying, it's worth trying at least once. There's only one thing to do. Spend your days thinking about the past you want to return to and vividly imagine that world before going to bed. Repeat this process continuously until you can have vivid dreams of the past. By the way, there is no guarantee that there are no risks. Although I've leaped parallel world 3 times, I intuitively feel a sense of guilt as if I've intervened in God's providence. I sense that if I continue moving to parallel worlds, I may be required to pay a certain price. Causality operates precisely in places we don't know. Roughly speaking, the scenario of our lives is determined by causality when we are born into this world. Time leaps and world line shifts disrupt causality that is functioning normally. If anomalies occur in causality, you will be trapped in a loop without a time limit in the same world line for a certain period. For example, if you at the age of 30 leap back to when you were a freshman in university, once you reach a certain day in your 4th year of university, you'll be forced to start over from your freshman year, and you'll loop without a time limit from the freshman year to your senior year. So it's not guaranteed that moving to the past will go smoothly. Ultimately, the results obtained from our actions should be accepted and settled with responsibility. Abandoning this and moving to a different world line is originally a taboo, and there is a possibility that you will have to bear a certain price for it. I cannot prove that this is true based on my intuition alone. I have said things that may stir up anxiety, but if you find yourself in a state of despair with no clear path forward in your current life, it is possible to retain the rationality of an adult while traveling to a parallel world in the past and to become a successful individual. If you feel stuck in life, I encourage you to give it a try.